Hi everyone, and welcome to Effective Altrusim and AI for Good. So, part of the weekend we're working with AI for Good. So we've been having a hackathon since yesterday. We're trying to figure out how to use machine learning for doing things that are actually productive and useful for the world. So since yesterday we started out thinking about the global goals for how to do things, and we presented 3 different tracks using AI for cell line images, AI for health, or safety in AI. And that's what we've been working on since yesterday.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's been really nice to act with people here. It's been like a really nice atmosphere. Yes, so I'm looking forward to the next 24 hours.
Yes,
I think.
So I think yesterday we ended a bit early, but I think today we're gonna go all night if people feel like doing that.
Yeah,
maybe.
So just for everyone in the hackathon, we have 3 different tracks. I thought we just go through very quickly. Nice Eric's here, and very quickly what the challenges are in these tracks that you've been looking at. If you can solve them. And I guess you can start with the satellite images. You can sit down and just say what you have been thinking and seeing.
We have done a little bit, and we decided to focus on other tracks.
Sounds like a hackathon. You said something about what kind of data it was that.
Yeah, so we looked at one data set which is over the Amazon rainforest. So it's like squares with some kind of landscape and a label or a mix of like 10 different labels. And then you just have to classify like what the mix of those labels. So the labels are like forest, road, cloud coverage, and stuff like that. And the best models do it with like 93% precision, so it's pretty good. Cool. I mean, to a certain extent, it can be considered solved, I guess, with 93%.
That's so nice. Cool. So this was some people working on that, and I think there's some more people working on health for AI for health, specifically health. And maybe one person from this can just say briefly what you will do first.
Yes, so there are different things, different places where AI can be applied in health to support doctors and in their decision making about patients. So we've been working. We were like 6 people, I guess, and we split it in 2 groups of 3 more or less. And we've been working on 2 different data sets. So one data set is MRI for Alzheimer. So they had many different MRI scans, and they were trying to kind of predict Alzheimer based on them. They don't share MRIs themselves, but they share the statistics from the MRI, so the most important information. So that's what I personally am working right now. And then there is another data set which is called Mental Health in Tech. So where they are analyzing the state of the mental health for the people who are working in tech. And there are the questions, what is influencing the most, and then in which situations mostly there are problems. Another group looking at the data set.
So are you trying to predict the Alzheimer's from brain scans?
Yes, that's what we are trying to do.
Nice. So finally, there is the track that I'm responsible for. I'm very excited about it. And I'll just say briefly. No, I'll give it away to you guys. So keep it short, I guess, because we can talk about this for 40 minutes.
Yeah. What we're looking at safety in the way of the concrete problems that are or have a point today with today's specialized artificial intelligence. There have been quite even in public a discussion about how artificial general intelligence have safety problems in that. Still, even with the specialized artificial intelligence, we still have these potential problems with safety. We have gone through this long. We're going through a paper published in Altrusim from Google.
This paper, this
Yes.
paper, is written by like some of the core people working in this space.
Yes, from Google and OpenAI. And they present problems divided into 5 areas and go through these areas on what are the meaning of these areas, what are the problem these areas describe, and show a few solutions but still what is problematic with these solutions as well. And in the afternoon, they'll go through laboratory environment on the computers called Grid World. And in this software, you can experiment with the different policies on how it affects AI safety.
And Eric is going to do a presentation on this, so I think it's going to be more clear for all of us, hopefully, how this works and like testing how you can actually practice with code, writing it yourself, make AI safe. Nice.
Yeah, thank you all. And now we're going to focus on, I think, Altrusim. And Marcus, you were going to talk about, tell us about what that is. And I'm really, really happy to have you guys here. And I actually, I think 2 years ago, I did some work for 80,000 hours. So for me personally, I'm really, really happy to have you guys here. And also, I think it's also really important to have connect with you, get people working with machine learning, with the work you're doing. And I think it's extremely important. I talked about that yesterday. I had a quote in the beginning. I talked about how I think our kids said, like, you have a large enough leverage to move the world. And the idea of machine learning being something very powerful, and then makes it really hard for us to find frameworks and ways of working with this technology that are useful and positive. So with that, I welcome you for talking about the Altrusim.
Cool, great, lovely to see you all, and I'm very happy that you either fled or sort of like came here despite of all of the nice weather outside. So yeah, my name is Marcus. I am the General Secretary for Effective Altrusim Sweden. So this is my job, doing things like this. It's pretty good. Before doing this, I worked as a management consultant, and before that, I did philosophy at the University of Cambridge, and that's where I very much this movement, this idea of effective altruism. And yeah, I'll basically give you a bit of an intro to that, and then we will have Karim there at the back talking about sort of ethical issues, sort of in connection with sort of artificial intelligence, like how can we make sure that this technology sort of helps improve the world as much as possible. And then Erik will give you some sort of like hands-on experience of this like field of technical AI safety and sort of like what does that look like in practice with this grid world from Before I start, just get like a feel of the room. How many of you have like heard of effective altruism before? Okay, cool. So this is good. This means I will try and not make things too basic, and I like very much encourage you to like ask questions and like challenge the stuff I say. And I'll be going like till like a bit before 3-ish, so you get like a little break before 10, basically. Cool. Okay, let's get going. So effective altruism. I usually start my talks by showing my favorite graph. And the reason this is my favorite graph is that it is super simple and it still has like a really strong message. So this is the world's global income distribution. So, over here we have all the people lined up, and on the y-axis we have their incomes. The first thing you see is that it's ridiculously widely distributed. It's even cut off there at the top, and so if you like make it as tall as possible, I don't know the numbers, but it's like several floors. It would go up like with the Bill Gates, etc. And so my first question to you is to try and figure out, to get a sense of where do you guys think you are sitting in this room? Where are you in terms of the global income distribution? 99? Okay. Do we have any other bids?
98, 99, 97, I think.
Okay, yeah. Anyone who thinks they're poorer than this? Okay, anyone who thinks they're like richer than the 1%? Okay, so we all feel like we're in between like the sort of top 3% to the top 1%, something like this. Yeah? Okay, I see nods, very good. Yeah, that's basically true. So roughly, sort of the average Swede will be somewhere around there. Living on like average salary. You're among the top, like at the very least the top 5% of the most global income distribution. Which is pretty ridiculous. Like, you know, we're all walking around, like, feel like we don't have enough money to like pay for things, we worry about making rent, etc. But in reality, like, we're actually like among the world's like actually richest people. Even like a Swedish student living off like student loans, not taking into account the fact that they like have their parents do their laundry, etc., will be in like the top 10% of the world's global income distribution. And this, like, you can draw several conclusions from this. I think the right conclusion is that this gives you a tremendous power. So like one of the main reasons that you're up there is to a large extent luck. So most likely you will have been born in a particularly rich country, or you will have been born to like parents who are doing well, etc. And that's, for a lot of people, is, or on average, that's like one of the main determinants of someone's income, just like where they were born. And because of that sort of luck that you have, because of that privilege you've been given, because of luck, you have a tremendous power to do good. And this is like one of the parts, one of the sort of starting points for this idea of effective altruism, where this movement basically started, this insight of I am like among the world's richest people, and I should use that power to improve the world. So, effective altruism, what is it? I enjoy philosophy. This is my university degree, and so I like it. There we go. So I usually define it as, number one, trying to find out how can we as a group, as an organization, improve the world as much as possible. Using evidence, using reason, actually taking this question seriously and trying to come up with the best answers we can. And then secondly, actually doing it. Right? So we don't just want to like sit there and sort of like feel good about ourselves and like having to figure out how the world works. We actually want to improve the world. This is about like using evidence to have the greatest impact you can on the world. So the cheesy way of saying it is that you're combining the head with the heart. So we're here to talk about AI for good. So what are the things we'll be talking about? I guess there are like two angles to take on this. One of them is sort of the first one, which is part of what you've done so far, which is sort of what are the world's problems and sort of where are some places where we could use AI or machine learning to improve the world, basically. Right? So like using machine learning to improve healthcare example, for example, would be one of those examples. So I think that's one thing, like mainly I will be addressing in what I say now. And the second one is sort of making sure that AI is used for good. So again, this is like a super powerful technology. And so therefore it becomes important that we use this technology to sort of, as good as possible. So both of those kinds of issues. In terms of in terms of both of these, I'm hoping that you will get inspired. Hopefully you like change all of your hackathon projects and do something completely different. Or at the very least, like you do that. And so this effective altruism movement, these are just some like faces of people who like have been inspired by this movement. So sort of very sort of among sort of tech entrepreneurs who sort of big people in the tech world have been inspired by this movement. So one of the largest foundations in this movement is the Open Philanthropy Project, Good Ventures, was set up by one of Facebook's co-founders. John Pollan donates his money like quite a lot because of these types of principles. Another like favorite of mine is Julia Galef, who's one of the co-founders of this organization called the Center for Applied Rationality. Basically tries to figure out like how can we be rational in the real world, use like rationality to become like better people. So now we have sort of some background, you have some kind of idea what this like effective altruism is about, but I'll try and illustrate this a bit more. And the way I'll try and do this is I will try and convince you or argue in favor of this statement. Basically saying that like, if we take evidence into account, if we use reason, if we think about things carefully, we can really, really improve our impact. We can have a much bigger impact on the world. And I'll try and show this to you by like giving some like, specific examples or some specific sort of principles. The first one is that quite often when we try and improve the world, when we try and make the world a better place, we kind of forget to remain critical. And so sometimes we sort of let the nice story, the nice narrative that explains why something works, why something makes the world a better place, sort of get away with that, basically. And so a way to illustrate this is that I'm going to test you guys. Okay? So I'm going to explain to you like 3 different interventions, 3 different sort of things that have been done and studied to figure out like how can we improve schooling in the world. And the first 2 examples, they relate to education in developing countries, and the third one relates to a Swedish thing. So the first one over here, does anyone recognize these little laptop thingies? Yes? What are they? 1 laptop per child. Yes, there we go. Does anyone, just to know, like when you do the thing, has anyone seen me do these before so that they know the answer?
Kind of.
Okay. Okay, so you guys are disqualified. You can vote. Okay. Cool. So yeah, 1 laptop per child. This was a big thing, I think, like early 2010s. Is that right? So basically, you know, had the TED Talk, the whole shebang, and the general idea is that you make computers. This was using Android software, I think, that are supposed to be very cheap. And the idea is that you can get sort of 1 laptop per child, and that this would improve their school. And so the study I'm referring to here was one of the first studies done on this, which was in, I think it was in Chile, with like thousands of kids, basically. A randomized control trial where you give some kids the computer, other kids don't get the computer. You see whose test scores are changed the most. Second one here on the right, that's my trying to illustrate this idea in sort of the development sphere about improving education called streaming. And streaming is this idea that we can improve schooling, improve kids' test scores by basically like making sure that they are in classes based on the skill level, based on how much they know. And so what you would do in streaming is you will do things like giving kids a test at the start of the year, and you'll see like who actually knows how to read. And if the kids don't know how to read, you know, you put them in the group of the kids that don't know how to read. And sort of the story behind that is something along the lines of like, over the past few decades, we've done really well in firstly making sure that like school enrollment globally has gone up. So like over 90% of kids nowadays are enrolled in schools. This is great. It's like amazing progress. But the problem is kind of like, but then that means we have like the next problem. We have kids who are enrolled in school, but they're not learning as much as they could. And so this is one way in which people have tried to improve that. And the story there is that quite often the kids fall behind, so they don't like, for example, if you don't learn how to read, like in your first grade, once you come to the second grade, you know, school assumes that you know how to read, and then you know things progress sort of negatively from there because you can't like absorb any of the knowledge. Third one is coming out study. So Friends. Do you know Friends? Yes, some nods. Okay. So Friends, this is big Swedish organization, and Kamrat Stadia, so like basically like a buddy, and it's like an anti-bullying thing. So the idea is that you have the class vote for the buddy, or one buddy like that's female and one buddy that's male. And the idea is that these children will then help the school to prevent bullying. For example, by like identifying when bullying is going on, or like letting teachers like doing workshops with the school class. Okay, do you feel like you have an idea of the interventions? Yeah, cool. Okay. The first 2 the one lap upper child and the streaming, they are they have been done by like randomized controlled trials. This third one is not evaluated by randomized controlled trial, but like an observational study done by school racket. And so hopefully like somewhat reliable. And my question to you then is, all of these, how do you think they worked? Like, do you think that they had positive effect, negative effect, or no effect? So starting with one lap per child, I want you to vote. So positive effect. What do you guys say? Okay. Do we have any sort of no effect people? A lot of no effect people. Okay. Negative effect. Okay, negative effect. Could someone explain to me what's your story there? Like why do you think that?
Well, I haven't heard anything really about the success of it, so I assume it did work. So,
Okay.
and the next thing is possibly you need to have the teachers taught how to use this new tool. I imagine that you might have forgotten that.
So wouldn't that suggest a no effect rather than negative effect?
There might be a focus on something where you don't get anything at all. If you use the old kind of teaching that you knew.
Okay, so you
you
replace it with like a worse way of. Yeah.
No, you get no traction.
Okay. Cool. Let's find out the answer. So no effect. So this is one of the biggest studies on this. Like thousands of kids. Seeing that there was no effect. It's because it's like similar reasons. So it seems like the theory is that like there was just like not very good software on this. Yeah, for example, the software wasn't like streamlined, for example. So like you could have had software that would like adapt to the child, for example, in which case maybe it would have worked. So this is not to say that these interventions don't work, but this particular program didn't work. But if you do it differently, you might work. Cool. Streaming. Positive effect. No effect. Negative effect. Okay. Cool. Why negative effect?
I myself decided that out of this field that just create grouping people by their ability to learn.
Yeah.
And then people start to learn, and then it's kind of a competition, and then after a while they become grouping again on that levels as well.
Yeah.
And then many of the students just lose their ambitions to study more because they can just get the best. So you can just create like 100 different groups. So you can just create like 2, 3, or 4 groups of people. And then it's going to be the same story again on that group as well. So
that's a nice story. Let's see what will actually happen. So that actually seems to have a positive effect. Like and pretty robustly across the world, or across developing country like settings. It seems that streaming is like one of the things that is just like pretty useful. But that's like that point I think is really good, and in some cases that will be the case. So for example, like one worry people have is like if you sort of that like the good kids will kind of like pull up the kids who don't know as much. It's like one effect that you might like lose out by doing the stream. Good.
Yeah, and also one other comment is that this positive effect is only on the grades, right?
Yeah.
So we don't like there could be like negative effects on their like motivation or anything that is hard to detect with that measurement. So it's important to keep that in mind. That we might miss something when we're measuring it, but it's still like of course very useful to actually measure it instead of just like guessing what might work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, cool. What about Stadia? Positive effect. Yeah, exactly. No, it's not necessarily. No effect. Okay, negative effect. Okay, so that was pretty even. What would be most interesting to have someone explain? Positive effect. Does anyone want to explain why it has a positive effect? What the mechanism is there? So this is measure. The measure is something like a measure of bullying. Sorry? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember the actual measurement that they look at. And it's obviously an observational study, so it's not going to be super rigorous. But I think it's something along the lines of Boolean instances or something like this is the measure. But I don't know exactly how that works.
I think it's just calling my attention to Boolean. Sometimes people don't know how negative they affect it. So yeah, follow that.
Okay, cool. Answer time. Negative effect. So I used to be one of these. I came up there, so it's pretty sad when I found this out that I can't have contributed to Boolean, or statistically speaking, at the very least. So yeah, so this was a report from school back in, I think it was 2014 or something like this, where they looked at loads of ways to counteract Boolean, and basically concluded that coming off study that it had for girls it had no effect, and for boys it had a negative effect. And they what they claimed was that because of things like sort of the actual voting process led to Boolean, it became kind of a popularity contest. Or the other bit was that sometimes coming off study the body was fully themselves. Because yeah, kids are cool. So yeah, so friends, you might not actually know this, and it's funny that people don't know this. They don't do this stuff anymore. They don't tell students that study. So I think that's a nice case of an organization seeing evidence and then doing different based on the evidence. So kudos to friends because of that. And then again, things are super complicated. There might be other interventions that are somewhat similar that actually do work. So bits of this sort of not study intervention seems to actually be useful, including the kids, for example, talking to the kids about these things seems to be somewhat robustly useful, my understanding. Cool. So what's the lesson here? The lesson is figuring out what works, figuring out what actually improves the world. It's difficult. And the stories we tell ourselves and sort of mechanisms for how things work, etc. They're not always going to be true, and it's we're always going to be able to find out, think of or come up with a nice story why something will make the world a better place. But the real way to figure that out is to, as much as possible, take evidence into account. Next point. Even among the things that seem to make the world a better place, even among the interventions that actually improve people's lives, there's a big difference. There's a difference not even just in the effectiveness, but also in the cost effectiveness. And so to illustrate this, these are some numbers from the CGT, and this is basically different ways of trying to improve people's health. So here we first have something called treatment of sarcoma. It's a type of cancer that you get when you go AIDS. It's a cancer of the mouth. It's not very nice at all. If you had it, you would probably want to do something about it. And here we have a measure of health, basically. So there's this measure that's often used called QALY, which is a quality adjusted life year. And that's a measure of health where you can either improve health or improve people's lives by making it sort of longer, or you can make the health better. So you can either improve the health state or sort of the length of life. And this sort of line down here is the 20,000 pound quality barrier. So this is the level at which the NICE, an organization in the UK, that decides what the UK government should spend money on in terms of healthcare. And if something is a better buy than this, if they can buy more health than one quality per 20,000 pounds, then they think it's a thing that they should be spending money on. If it's below there, they're not as sure, but the default will be not. So we have this treatment for sarcoma, super bad. We want to do something about this, but we can help. We can improve people's lives. We can sort of improve health more by doing something else, by going further back in this kind of causal chain. So just introducing antibiotic biotherapy instead. And it looks that's about at least 10 times as much sort of health per pound, per dollar, per program put into this. But we can do even better than this. So instead of someone's contracted the disease and we sort of like hold it back, you can sort of prevent the transmission in the first place. So you can do things to make sure that HIV/AIDS isn't transmitted from mother to child during pregnancy. But we can do even better than this. We can do even further back the causal chain. So instead of sort of during the pregnancy, making sure that the child doesn't contract the disease, we can make sure that the mother in the first place doesn't contract the disease. So by distributing condoms, again, we can like at least like double the amount of sort of health that we're producing, the amount by which we improve people's lives.
And we know this by tests. Randomized testing.
Yeah, so it'll be based on a few things. There's one question is like avoiding one instance of HIV/AIDS. How many qualities is that? That's one question. That one's done in like a pretty complicated way where you do like, so economists spend a lot of time on this, and you do basically like huge surveys where you ask people loads of like really tricky questions like how many years of life with HIV/AIDS would you trade for how many years of life with like back pain or something like that? And you do this, and if you do this enough with like loads of people, and you do loads of like constant footwork, then you start getting these measures of like how bad is a certain health state. And then in terms of the like amount by which you reduce HIV/AIDS by the thing, it will be based mainly on that. But we can do even more. So we can move sort of into improving people's lives or sort of improving health even more if we broaden our view and look not just at HIV/AIDS, but we also take into account that there are like other diseases in the world that are also really bad, are also like making people's lives a lot worse than they could have been. And so, for example, if you try and distribute bed nets to battle malaria, again, we can basically like improve people's lives by like 3 times. And the numbers here will obviously they'll be like rough, like they might not be like wholly true, etc. But the general picture is that here on the left we have good things. We have things that on the surface sound really nice, that are good things that we would like to do more of. But these things on the surface sort of might seem like they're the same thing, actually differ a lot in terms of the impact they have on the world. And that's kind of like the lesson I want you to take from, right? So first there's like this like things differ in terms of their effectiveness, and then secondly, things differ in terms of their cost effectiveness as well. And if you realize these things, spend your money, your time, etc., taking that into account, you can have a much bigger impact. Yeah, before we move on to the next part, does anyone have like any questions or anything that they'd like to raise at this point?
Yeah, I have a question about this. It is basically that prevention is a better, cheaper, effective way to treat all of these, to achieve better quality. One issue I have about that is it doesn't actually compare, especially the AIDS situation, where if you prevent infection of AIDS during pregnancy, then you will have like the whole life of the child without AIDS. That's like the whole life of the quality. Whereas if you try to treat with antiretroviral therapy, then you may assume that a lot of grown-up people are in that group. So they, of course, are going to have from that point on worse quality. So it's kind of like that measurement for me is kind of hard to compare. But of course, the other instances, like with malaria and such, is a lot more true that it's a good prevention to that next. So,
I'm I'm not sure I understand this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not probably not explaining myself correctly, but I mean, when you prevent an infection,
Yeah.
infection in the child,
Yeah.
then
That likely includes the whole life.
the whole life. And it's not because maybe not because of the intervention, it's just because the child has their whole life to live. Whereas if you try to improve the condition in a grown-up person, then the grown-up person has whole life to live. So yeah, maybe that is some kind of
To me,
I don't know if it's adjusted or not.
so to me, it would be as you describe it, and to me that's like a feature, not a bug. So like preventing a child from like living an entire life with HIV/AIDS, like that's brilliant. That's awesome. That's great. And we should like take into account that it's like several years in which they don't have this like bad health.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I'm saying that maybe the intervention, if you have to choose one, that maybe it's not comparable to say, okay, I'm going to give all the money to preventing infection to the child and not treating those who are already. Of course, it doesn't have to be right, but it's like kind of hard to weigh that.
So I guess just for your point, are you saying if you have experimented, you wanna like who you kill or like you're driving a car and you're like someone who's young or someone who's old?
Had to go for the trial.
Right, but I guess like but is that what you're saying? And you're saying we should always kill the old person because the young person is gonna live longer. That's basically what, or is that your point?
Maybe it's yeah, probably it's something that doesn't have the right answer. But my issue is not with
There might be a misunderstanding here. So just to be clear, when you compute the quads, you look at the expected time of that person. So for a child, you account for that they will live for 60 years. So that's what they do. Is that solved now?
yes, yes.
Okay.
It's adjusted for the effect.
They do that. They do that. Everything's
Great. Cool. Do you have a quick one?
I'm not sure.
I'll have a
So it's been a puzzle for me for a long time why the bottom line there isn't already black.
That's a really good
I
question.
agree it's very cost effective and it's not a very high cost. So why haven't all of these deadnets gotten them already?
Do you have an answer on that point?
I have a point on that point. So this all sounds very nice, but I think like when we try to go to reality, we are aware of this very important system. So the emerging properties we have when we do something that has a very clear effect in the short term, like for example, distribution of revenue, that can have an effect that we don't want to expect in the long term. For example, when we donate that next to a small community in Africa, things like that. I mean, you have to be aware that all of those treatments are not forever. They're going to break. And by giving them for free in that place, we are basically giving the local market and doing exist for that. So if these treatments grow, in 20 years' time, there will be no one that these treatments will give the right to fix them. Things like that, because there was no market for that. I think like when we go for donation to people that need it, we have to be very aware of more like giving the tools for them to be able to keep this uneven distribution of resources all the time, because we can make people dependent.
Cool. Okay. So on that point, I think that's like I share similar worries, and so like the thing we're looking for when we're like donating money, or at least like according to me that you should be looking for, right, is like improving the world as much as possible. And in that case, as much as you can, you should take those like long-term effects into account. And so like similar to your point, like these like now international aid agencies, they don't like give out like free clothes like they used to, because it kills the local market. In terms of bed nets, I'm not sure you have the same kind of local market for that. So that's like that you're actually killing. But like instead, it's important to make sure that you sort of have the sort of the local infrastructure to, for example, like replace the bed nets. So for example, one of the main recommendations by GiveWell, that I'll tell you like teeny tiny bit about later, They are against Malaria Foundation, and they are like good at this, of like following up the bed nets, making sure that they're like still whole, etc. So I think that's true. That's something that we should take into account, and I at least think and hope that, like, for example, Kidwell does that in like a pretty good way. In terms of that question, that's like a really, really important, interesting question. My like very short answer is something along the lines of like, we don't have an efficient market here. And so like the reason, like when people spend money to try and improve the world, they don't just do it to improve the world as much as possible. And so that's why we see these kinds of like opportunities that like look really, really good, basically. Whereas like if we're in like a market economy, if there's like a way to like you know, make your money grow by 1,000 times, you know, that chance is going to like be picked up like this. But in this world, less so, because we don't have the same kind of feedback. Cool. So we don't have much time, so I will rush through the next bit. You will not get a lot of details, but this is like the third thing that I usually want people to like go away with, like a third thing within technology, which is this idea of cause prioritization. And so it's illustrated by this lovely little right? And so the general idea here is that like quite often when we think about improving the world, we kind of like treat all of the problems, all of the world's problems the same. And it's the case that we have loads of problems in the world, we have loads of things we want to do something about, but you and I, like one person, we only have so much energy, so much resources, etc., and we can't spend it on everything, right? And so if we're in this situation, let's like put out the fire before we start like going to get some photos. And so this is one of the like big questions that this like effective Altrusim movement tries to like work with, which is like what causes, what problems in the world present like the best opportunities to do good. Really difficult question, but like it's going to be very, very important if you want to improve the world as much as possible. And I'll basically just give you this framework. I won't give you any of the results of the framework because we don't know. And so here's like the general framework that people would use to think about choosing causes, which is we want to be focusing on the causes that are big, so like big in scale. The bigger the scale of the problem, the like bigger chance that you have bigger. Pretty intuitive. The second one, less intuitive, neglectedness. So the idea is basically the less energy is being put into this problem, the less energy people have put into this problem so far, the bigger my opportunity to do it. So if you're like one of the first people to realize that something is a problem, for example, you're gonna like be able to like have a greater impact there. And then the third one is solvability. So the idea is like we want to be focused on problems that we can actually do something about. And these kinds of three factors are those that like people will think about to try and like decide or like put some kind of conclusion about what causes, what ways to try to improve the world. Is that the best one? Okay, I'll just show you this. I won't explain why. These are kind of like three of the main things that like come out of this framework, or have like, according to some people within the effective Altrusim movement, seems to be the like some of the best opportunities to do most of it. So usually people talk about improving developing world health. So most of the stuff that we talked about like, so far in this, then about that. The second one is to do something about factory farming. So there are loads of animals in the world in factory farms who like lead lives that aren't particularly good. In fact, they're probably bad. And if we can do something about that, that presents like a good opportunity. And then the last one is doing things to make sure that our long-term future, that like humanity's sort of history going like thousands of years into the future, goes as well as possible. This is sort of the most speculative side of Altrusim, and is the side that kind of relates to this stuff that anyone will be talking about soon, about like how do we make sure that AI, for example, is used for good. Yeah, so here's something you should know about. You should know about GiveWell. GiveWell, they recommend the best places where you can do good if you donate to charities doing something in the public. They're great organizations. Second one, if you are a founder, you should be thinking about Founders Pledge. Founders Pledge is an organization that allows you to like sign a little thing. Basically, you sign a contract which says, when I sell my company, I will donate a portion of my exit to charities. And they make this like super simple for you, and they help you find like the best places for you to give. They're super awesome. You should definitely like get in touch with them or like ask me if you're interested in signing up. And thirdly, let's not talk about this. Lastly, if you find this stuff interesting, you can stick around. You can listen to Eric. You can also like talk to me afterwards, or some other like effective altruism people. So like Gustav, for example, has the PA group at ESU, and we have a few people who have like been involved with like a lot of our events. So find a person. If you want to like go to more of our events, you should like our Facebook page. That's like where most of the stuff happens. We do things like, one example is we do a careers club fight. We did one like recently. So who was in the careers club here? Yeah, cool. Which is basically we like over 4 sessions try to like together figure out how can I use my career to improve the world. At least I had a lot of fun. Yeah. So those are some of the things you should keep up to date there. And then another like thing that you can do that seems like a very important thing to do is to find out more about yourself. You can do this by reading a book called Doing Good Better. It's like the classic go-to intro book to effective altruism. Highly recommended. Check out a thing called 80,000 Hours, mentioned by Lydia. They try and figure out like what can you do with your career to improve the world as much as possible. They have a really good careers guide on their website. The comment, for example, was from there. It's like super like readable, etc. And they also have a really good podcast, which is like super in-depth interviews with people who are doing like some of the world's most important work. I highly enjoy it. And if you're interested in finding out more about sort of potential, this stuff to do with like artificial general intelligence, etc. Anyone will know more about this than me, but like one place you can start is by reading this book called Superintelligence by Gustav, one of Sweden's most influential philosophers, or most influential Swedish philosophers, I guess. It's the best way to put it. Yeah, that was basically what I wanted to say. We're now like 5 to 3, I think. So maybe like grab a little break. What do you think, Peter?
Sure. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Fantastic talk. So. And I think my question is so. I mean, I guess now the crowd here is quite technical, and the question is, I guess, do you think that the technical skills we have can be useful for development in some way? Can you think of a way where we can, like, I don't know, build something that could be helpful to you, or something that you feel like, I don't know, that could be helpful for your community?
The answer is yes.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I think there's like loads of things that like can be useful. I think one nice example is this. So basically, like using machine learning basically to create companies that like do a lot of good. This is like not, I guess not. Yeah, they don't use machine learning to my knowledge, but they're like a good example of sort of tech entrepreneurship doing sort of direct good. So they basically do like transmit like remittances. So if you like give money to your family living in a country, for example, alone in the country, often that's like super expensive, and these guys use like mobile currencies, etc., to make that a lot cheaper. And so they'll like undercut the market by like several %. And this means that like millions of dollars actually go to people.
Yeah, and also a short comment on that is that the overall market, or like the amount of money spent on remittances, is larger than the amount of money spent on foreign aid. So if you actually like, even if you make just like a few % savings on that through techniques like this, you can like make a
huge amount of more money going into people who need it instead of just like giving it to banks.
And I guess like other like interesting things. Yeah, I would say like one thing is the sort of like AI safety related stuff. Another thing that I'm like quite excited about is like using machine learning to improve like access to mental health care. So like CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, seems to be something that can like be done in like app form. And if we could do that and like deliver something that's like somewhat equally good to like an actual therapist, that would be like a huge boon to the world. That would be awesome.
I actually do that. So I done visit in online cognitive therapy, so I actually do that.
You're the perfect man.
So we should talk about that.
Yeah.
It's actually, but it's a really good thing. I think it's really useful. I think it's a good thing. I've had a project with 55 years working with delivering using applications. So it works. I mean, it doesn't work for everyone, but I think it's good with great working. You can have it everywhere. So
Yeah.
You have it like all the time. So it's actually really good. I think something that I think can help a lot of people.
Yeah, and also like a comment on that is that oftentimes it can be focused on just like mental health for people in like richer countries, but there has been very little to actually export that to the rest of the world. Because like most people can't afford to go to a psychiatrist, and they wouldn't have a psychiatrist near them. So if we can figure out ways to actually get mental health to those people, that could be extremely powerful.
Cool.
Thank you, Marcus. This was one of the best talks this week, I have to say. So now just quick break, and then...
A quick break. Yeah, exactly. There's food in the kitchen, so if everyone wants food, I can bring up food, I guess. If people want food.
Let's bring
And again, it's a quick break, and then we're going to have...
and some more chairs.
Yeah.